This is a real haunted house, and tonight I will be staying here alone. There is no camera person here, no one holding lights or operating a mic. I won't even have a phone or radio, in fact, no contact with the outside world at all. It's just me, this camera, and my scientific tools. My heart is pounding in my chest right now because there's no telling what I may experience tonight. And I assure you, everything you'll see will be 100% real. I'm author and paranormal investigator Joshua P. Warren, and this is Alone in a Haunted House.
Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Ghosts in the Mountains. I am your host, Caleb Hanks, and with me, as always, the man who I have ever branded forever and ever throughout his entire life, the doctor, the captain, neither doctor nor captain, Dr. Captain Austin Burgess. Brother, how are you this evening?
Not too bad. How are you doing tonight?
I am doing great. And you may realize that we had a slightly different intro tonight, and I just will tell you, we're not changing the ever-beloved Ghost in the Mountains intro, but that is more of a teaser of things to come. Now, if you've been listening to the podcast recently, then you probably heard our wonderful interview with the man we've been trying to get on the air for the longest time, as Billy Joel would say. And we finally were able to get the majestic, the beautiful Mr. Joshua P. Warren to come on the show, and it was so fun reminiscing with him. So, as you heard at the beginning of this episode, that was Joshua P. Warren at the beginning of his incredible film, Alone in a Haunted House, a place that I thought was the Battle Mansion.
Yeah, I did too. Like when you play the video, like the first few minutes, it looks just like the Battle Mansion until he says the name of the place.
Yeah, but I'm going to leave that in there as the intro because, you know, hey, it's still a creepy intro.
He doesn't say the name in the intro, so we're not technically lying there.
Yeah, he did go somewhere alone in a haunted house, but we're looking at a different haunted house that I'm fairly certain Warren ended up in quite a few times. We are talking about a place that if you're not from around here, and heck, maybe even if you are, but you're not super steeped in the paranormal lore, maybe you're going to miss this place when it can truly be right under your nose. And here's the weird part about it. You know, the first ever episode of Ghosts in the Mountains is about one of the most famous hauntings around this area, and that is the Pink Lady of the Grove Park Inn. And there's no denying the Pink Lady is more than likely the most famous, you know, haunting or ghost apparition, anything like that here in at least Asheville, maybe not the region. But it's kind of strange, because right next door used to be this place called the Battle Mansion. Mm-hmm. It used to be the old WLOS headquarters, which is our local news station. Now they've currently moved just a stone's throw where we're recording the show from right now.
Yeah, our studio's right next door.
Yeah, we're in the same studio. Look, we're WLOS affiliates. Not really, but it's kind of cool when you think about it because WLOS used to broadcast out of this crazy-ass looking castle.
Yeah, it's like this neo-Gothic looking structure, I guess.
Yeah.
That's the best way to describe it.
Neo-Gothic, definitely a lot of stone. I mean, I think it had like what they describe as like turrets on it in certain areas. Mm-hmm. It had like, you know, the conical things.
I saw some pictures of like little gargoyle faces that were built into it as well. So
it's already kind of a strange place to run the local news out of. But it was so big that, I mean, they were able to essentially turn the whole thing into, maybe not the whole thing, but at least a portion of it into, you know, the headquarters to have a whole production studio over there. Gotta ask you a question. When you were looking through this, did the name Bill Banner ever pop up?
Let me check my handy dandy notes here. Yep. Bill Banner, Director of Retail Services for over 40 years. Got some pretty crazy quotes from him that we'll get to a bit later.
So I knew Bill.
Did you? Okay, cool.
Yeah, and I met Bill through Josh.
That makes sense.
Bill Banner, dude. So he's got one of those Marvel Comics superhero names, you know, with the alliteration, the BB. Brother, Bill Banner was one of the most interesting dudes I've ever known. So he was a journalist when World War II was ending, and he got shot down in a plane as a journalist over, I think, Japan.
Oh, wild.
And they kept him as a prisoner of war and tortured him for weeks. And I mean, Josh and I and some people went to his house, and he told us about how he was in like broadcasting since the beginning of broadcast and all this stuff. And we just sat with him one evening and just talked for hours and just kind of let him tell all these stories about this stuff. And I recalled, I was like, I'm fairly certain that he was like a part of WLOS from the beginning. But man, what a crazy evening. What a character. He was one of those people that like lived his life to the fullest. And I attended his funeral when he finally passed away, because he was pretty old when I met him. But I wanted to bring that up because I can't really ever think about WLOS or the Battle Mansion without thinking of Bill. So
yeah, and I don't want to give too much away. We'll get back to it, but I think Bill had some of the craziest experiences that I found out about at Battle Mansion. So
that wouldn't surprise me in the least.
Yeah, so not to give too much away, but we definitely have some cool stuff in store for you here shortly.
And near the end of the episode, I will share a strange story he shared with me that was completely unrelated to the Battle Mansion, but you know, he experienced some very interesting things in his life. So
yeah,
that said, I won't keep rambling on, but Austin, all right, here's this place that's been next to the Grove Park Inn, a place that we know well. I never got to go in the Battle Mansion myself. I'm assuming you probably didn't either.
Unfortunately not.
So when do you find out about the Battle Mansion?
About the time I'm doing my senior project and you tell me to pick up Haunted Asheville, and that's like chapter 2 in the book, I think. So that kind of threw it on my radar.
All right, cool. All right, man. So let's get into this thing. When does the Battle Mansion become a place?
Well, we're going to have to do a little bit of backing up here before we get to the actual construction of the Battle Mansion, just to give you the full context of everything. But, you know, before that, I do kind of want to like mention that this is an interesting topic for us today, not only because it like kind of ties to and references back to a lot of our older episodes, but it also, as you mentioned, is our first episode on a place that no longer exists.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's kind of an interesting aspect. It kind of brings up the question of like, if a haunted building is torn down, where do the spirits go? Do they linger in kind of the new structures that are built on that same land? Do they like find a new place to frequent, or do they just kind of move on from this plane of existence?
Dude, that's kind of an Inception question, because
it's
like, all right, if people die and then they stick around, if the house dies, does its essence, do the spirits that encapsulated it stay? That is an Inception. That's a paranormal burrito.
Yeah. It's you know, makes this topic kind of deep in a way.
Oh yeah.
So you know, like I said, it's one that's exciting. It's kind of a new aspect for something that we're covering. I did mention that this particular episode kind of calls back to some of our older episodes, some of our, what I call like reoccurring main characters that we've talked about on the show before. And, you know, when you think about that, you've got a lot of prominent figures that were a big part of shaping Asheville and what we've discussed on this podcast. You know, you've got people like E.W. Grove and Fred Seeley and George Washington Vanderbilt. But if it wasn't for the quote unquote main character of today's episode, all these people might not have even stumbled onto this mountain town in the first place.
Please tell me it's not Fitzgerald.
I mean, his name is thrown around, but no.
I knew it would be, but...
So yeah, I think with that being said, this guy really had one of the biggest parts in shaping the history of what Asheville has become. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Samuel Westray Battle. Now, Sam was born August 4th in 1854, kind of near Rocky Mount, North Carolina, which is on the other side of the state. In 1875, he graduated from Bellevue Hospital Medical College in Virginia, which I'm just going to note is spelled exactly like the road name in the Haunting of Bellevue segment we did on the Faces of Evil episode.
Interesting.
Don't think it has any relation, but just an interesting coincidence, if nothing else. But anyways, from 1875 to 1884, he worked as a surgeon in the U.S. Navy. And from 1879 to 1883, he was actually in charge of the U.S. Naval Hospital in Pensacola, Florida. So he kind of worked his way up through this, and eventually in 1884, he did retire from naval service due to an injury on his left wrist and hand that he sustained during a collision at sea. So being just a medical part of the Navy, he still experienced a little bit of battle, if you will.
There you go.
No pun intended. Then in 1884, he not only married his wife Alice, but the couple moved to Asheville so Dr. Battle could practice medicine, and he really kind of made a name for himself and became really a beloved member of the community. Now, he initially lived in the apartment building in downtown that many refer to as the old Biltmore Hotel, although they took up residency there before it had that name. And unlike his later home, this building is still standing today. It's basically located right next to the Civic Center. Do you know what I'm talking about? That kind of big, tall hotel apartment-looking building right next to what's now the Harrah's Cherokee Center.
Yeah, I've actually been in there. I've known some people that roomed in there.
Oh, cool. Interesting. Yeah, if you actually remember back to the Highland Hospital Zelda Fitzgerald episode, the local author and bookstore owner, Tony Batista, his store was actually located on the first floor of that building. So something we've referenced before.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's where Tony kind of first met the drunken Scott Fitzgerald who stumbled into a store looking for somewhere to pee. So, yeah. Told you we'd bring up his name.
Yep, he's everywhere.
But jumping back to Dr. Battle, what brought him to Asheville in the first place is pretty interesting and pretty full circle for us. So Dr. Battle was working on a study of the meteorological reports from the United States government when he recognized that the Asheville Plateau was the driest atmospheric territory east of the Mississippi River.
Damn, it must be damp east of the Mississippi River.
He also noticed that the elevation of Asheville made it suitable for all throat and pulmonary troubles. So on January 2nd of 1888, Battle presented a paper to the County Medical Society of Asheville. The presentation was titled Climate and the Climactic Treatment of Disease with Special References to the Merits of the Asheville Plateau. And in it, Dr. Battle addressed the ideal temperature, humidity levels, the amount of wind, rainfall, atmospheric pressures, all these factors that were believed to play a role in curing or at least relieving respiratory infections such as tuberculosis.
Yep.
So, that's something we've talked about quite a bit here. And in his presentation, he kind of goes on to lay out all the factors. He goes into everything. I mean, it's pretty well thought out for, admittedly, when I've always heard that Asheville has this healing climate that people would seek relief from tuberculosis up here, I always kind of thought that was a little bit, I'll say like borderline woo-woo, but at least just like a very maybe basic understanding of some scientific principles that just weren't advanced at the time. But, Dr. Battle goes into some pretty deep explanations on stuff. In his presentation, he says, "Let us briefly sum up Asheville's atmospheric advantages without bestowing indiscreet or overzealous praise. Asheville climate is preeminently suitable, one for the earliest stages of pulmonary phthisis, especially for such subjects as can and will get out in the air and are determined to take benefit of the dry, tonic, invigorating, bracing qualities thereof, and keep good hours." I don't know what that means, but conditions which seems to favor germ propagation and prolong the species of the genius bacterium do not exist here. The mortality of pulmonary phthisis is not large in any part of North Carolina, being according to the mortality tables of the 10th census, 13.4 of every 10,000 of population throughout the state. But it's interesting to note that the mountain counties show a mortality rate of only 10 in every 10,000 population. So he's going through and looking at not only census records and some of these other scientific aspects to draw this kind of theory that for some reason, people that live in the mountains of Western North Carolina aren't experiencing respiratory problems as much as the rest of the state, and in comparison, really to the rest of the country at the time.
Quick question. Was this guy getting kickbacks for pushing Grove's Chill Tonic?
Grove's Chill Tonic was a malaria treatment.
So it didn't have anything to do with TB?
No.
Because the placement of his house next to the GPI is a little interesting.
Yeah. They were buds. I'll put it that way. Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. There's a little bit of crossover there. But I thought it was kind of interesting that something I'd kind of written off in the past as being like, yeah, that's what they thought back in the day, but clearly it was just a misunderstanding of scientific principles. Dr. Battle really did his due diligence and rooted this theory into, as much of the scientific method as he really could for the time being. So I'm going to have to kind of take back my my previous thinking and apologize for my ignorance on that here because, I'm no scientist, but Dr. Battle seems to have kind of done his work on this one.
Yeah. And I don't know anything about Battle. I'm not insinuating that he was a shady character. I'm just like, you get a spot next to the GPI. It's kind of interesting.
Well, yeah, it is. And you'll see why that is here shortly. But, you kind of see where this is going. Like Dr. Battle was really kind of like a primary driving force for Asheville becoming known and marketed as this big tuberculosis sanctuary, if you will. And this part's kind of interesting too. How you always hear like the nickname Land of the Sky used for this area. Well, that was actually directly influenced by Dr. Battle's claims of the healthy climate in this area. And this next part really threw me for a loop because it's a name that we probably, all at least recognize or familiar with, but it's not it's not a reference to the guy that we probably think of off the top of our heads. Dr. Battle was close friends with a journalist and humorist by the name Edgar Wilson Nye, and he went by and wrote under the name Bill Nye. Did you know any of this?
No.
We had our own Bill Nye here in Western North Carolina long before the infamous Bill Nye the Science Guy.
I almost worked with him one time.
Did you really?
Yeah. It was like a audio campaign, but
that's cool.
Didn't come through.
So Bill Nye actually coined the phrase land of the sky in a lot of the articles he was writing at the time. And he would kind of use this to write these little humorous, quirky anecdotes that would essentially advertise his friend Dr. Battle's claims about the Asheville air. And a lot of his articles really kind of put Asheville on the map nationally for this newly theorized medical benefits of the area. And Bill Nye, seems like another fascinating character just within Western North Carolina. He was friends with Mark Twain. He published various books. In addition to his journalism work, one of his most famous ones was Bill Nye's History of the United States. So when digging into his history a little bit, I found a thread about him that claimed he lived in a house called Buck Shoals, which was located near Asheville Airport off of Fanning Bridge Road.
There you go.
Apparently, a bunch of locals kind of used to visit the ruins of this mansion after it had been torn down. But, I'd kind of be interested to see how this ties into some of the other paranormal stories of Fanning Bridge Road that we've covered a little bit here on the podcast.
Isn't Fanning Bridge where the Grange was supposed to be?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was kind of alluding to. Like,
what the hell?
Like maybe, is this just kind of like that telephone effect of like some of these stories getting smushed together?
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, I was reading on that thread and one of the commenters responded, "Isn't this supposed to be haunted?" So, maybe we have something to dig into in the future.
Looks like it.
But to put the cherry on top of this side tangent, you want to guess where he's buried?
Fletcher Cemetery?
Calvary Baptist Church.
Boom. There we go.
Boom.
Why not?
Why not, right? So anyways, not long after Asheville is kind of put on the map as this retreat for people suffering from TB, Dr. Battle starts to receive just an influx of patients from all over the country seeking his medical services. And in fact, Mrs. W.H. Vanderbilt came to Western North Carolina in the late 1880s seeking the doctor's professional services. And of course, she was accompanied by her youngest son, George.
There you go.
So if you remember back to the Biltmore House episode, we talked about a young George staying at the old original Battery Park Hotel and looking out at the land that he would soon buy and turn into Biltmore Estates. Well, this was the same exact trip. If it wasn't for Dr. Battle, George Vanderbilt might not have even discovered this little hole in the wall in the first place.
Wow, that is actually really insane.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, dude, that's kind of crazy because you think about it. It's like scientific research of the area essentially might have turned this whole thing into what it was or what it is.
Yeah, 100%. Because remember, I mean, I think you were alluding to Grove's chill tonic being, used for TB or having that thought in your head, but you're not too far off because if you remember, Grove actually initially first came to Asheville because he was seeking relief from tuberculosis.
Yeah.
And the rest is kind of history from there.
So was he seeking out Battle?
Yeah. That was once that he was put on the map, Battle was kind of the premier doctor of the area since this was his theory that kind of put it on the map in the first place. He was the most well-respected physician in the area. So, suffice to say, like without Battle's influence, Asheville more than likely would not be home to the Grove Park Inn, Biltmore House, and probably wouldn't be kind of what we know it today because those are really some of the most prominent attractions in the area.
Dude, that is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Like, who knew that this was like the force pulling all of these people to this place. That's crazy. No wonder the guy had a mansion.
Right? And that's what was blowing my mind. I keep just like pulling these threads as I'm doing the research this week. And it's like, oh, so this makes sense now.
Never would have thought that in a million years.
Right? So additionally, when Grove was planning construction on some of his kind of more downtown buildings like the Grove Arcade and the current Battery Park Hotel, he named the street that divides those two buildings Battle Square after his friend and physician, Dr. Battle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all coming full circle here. Now, Dr. Battle went on to become the medical director of Clarence Baker Memorial Hospital in Biltmore. And during that same period, he served as a major assistant general on the North Carolina State Guard and as a member of the American Medical Association, Mississippi Valley Medical Association, Tri-State Medical Association, American Climatological, there we go, Association, Association of Military Surgeons, North Carolina Board of Health, the Medical Corps of the U.S. Navy, Naval Order of the United States. So this dude just has like this long list of achievements.
Good God.
Very well-respected medical professional. He was president of the Buncombe County Medical Society and actually was a member of the North Carolina Society of the Cincinnati. Not sure what that one is, but I just figured I'd round out his achievements by including them all.
I think it's probably just people from Asheville that really like Cincinnati.
I guess so. Why not?
I like Cincinnati. I've been there many a time.
So, yeah, like I said, he's really that most prominent, well-respected medical professional for the time, and especially in the area. In addition to his medical services that he brought to the area, he was also kind of a big proponent for just civic expansion of the city of Asheville. He was a supporter of the project that brought street rail cars or trolleys to Asheville as a form of public transportation, because apparently that used to be a big thing back in the day.
Right.
I found an article on that because I wasn't really too familiar with the whole streetcar trolley system that Asheville had. But it says by 1907, Asheville led the state by carrying 3 million streetcar passengers when compared to Charlotte and Wilmington with only 2 million apiece.
Yeah, I didn't know quite the extent of how much that was integrated in the transit system around here, but I did know that was a pretty big thing because my mom and dad, my dad's a huge history buff, and they have a bunch of old pictures of Asheville back in the day, and you see the trolleys all over the place, and you see a guy who's like rolling. There's one in I think it's 1906 or something, but there's this picture that hung in the house for the longest time that's this guy on a wagon, and he just has this little possum companion with him. It's like a familiar.
Oh, that's so cool. That's really funny.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Yeah, I really knew nothing about the whole streetcar system until I started looking into this from just Battle's involvement with that. For years I'd always heard about that rumor of the abandoned underground subway rail system.
I was just gonna say, that's as far as I know, there are some abandoned underground kind of catacomb things. To what extent those actually go underground through town, I don't know if they really know. And then also, I think a vast majority of them are blocked off. Yeah,
I know there was one, I think it was near Pax Tavern that butted up to the jail. Someone went through there and ended up in a cell. Yeah, yeah. And I think from what I remember hearing, I think there's some sort of public restroom that was underneath the old Vance Monument. Yeah, yeah, and that was going to be part of maybe the station. I don't really know. I know Warren's really done some extensive research. I'd love to pick his brain on the underground rail system.
We ought to get into that with him next time because I think he has looked really far into that.
He has. That's pretty much my resource for everything I know about it.
There you go.
But yeah, on top of all his accomplishments, Dr. Battle was just known for his charming personality, and he had this desire to be friends with everyone he met. He was also known for having a great deal of human sympathy and maybe even empathy in this case, because one quote about him says, "For the sufferings of his patients are, in truth, his own." So, a little bit of phrasing for the time, but it's basically saying that for every patient he saw that was suffering, Dr. Battle was really empathetic to everything they were going through and treated that with as much respect and did everything he can in his power to make sure that they would at least be relieved of symptoms or hopefully cured.
A dream of a healthcare system long past.
I know, right? No joke. There's one person, Jane Bingham, I guess she was a family friend, and she was quoted as saying, "He was a jolly old person. Everyone loved Dr. Battle. He was a great wit." So I think he was just so well respected in the community, not only for his obviously his medical prowess, but just being a good guy, which, a lot of times you don't always see those two things line up.
Yeah, you definitely don't.
When looking back and reflecting on the life of Dr. Battle, Asheville Times reporter James B. Kane describes him as strikingly individual of all things. Dr. Battle was particularly so in his attire. He never followed fashions, he set his own, and no matter what he wore, it always seemed part of him, rather than an external decoration.
Huge proponent of the hat with the little spinny thing on it.
His favorite headgear outside of the formal evening silk topper was his soft felt hat with a wide brim variety. In the winter, he wore a cape reaching almost to his knees, a white flannel suit with a black silk sash in lieu of a waistcoat was his usual summer attire. He always carried a small rattan, so popular with English and Indian Army officers, and who of the old-timers cannot mentally see him now, dressed with meticulous care, with pointed mustachios and carefully trimmed Van Dyke, and a military air withdrawal, with cape and cane swinging as he came down Battery Park Hill, across Hollywood and up the avenue. Is it any wonder that fellow members sitting in the windows of the old Asheville Club watched him with admiring interest until he disappeared around the corner? So he was just this enigmatic figure. Like, I just see this dude, pointy mustache, big wide brim hat, wearing a cape.
He was friggin' D'Artagnan from the Three Musketeers.
Basically.
I mean, they just described it to a T.
No joke. I found a picture of Dr. Battle. He's sporting the pointed mustache, the wide brimmed hat. Not quite a fedora, but still a little reminiscent of the Hat Man. But
I got to see that. I bet he just sounds like such a badass.
Yeah,
dude.
yeah, no joke. Either way, it's just kind of easy to see how he became such a beloved personality here. Now, sadly, his wife Alice passed away on October 29th of 1899. And I think that, being the personality he was, he really did love his wife dearly. And I think that did hit home for him. So, he continued on to live in the area and continued his reputation. And about a year from her death, I found an article. It was one of those Today in History articles in the Citizen Times that references a birth that occurred on August 22nd, which really caught my eye because it's my birthday. But on August 22nd, 1900, Cornelia Vanderbilt was born at 9 p.m. in the Louis Room at the Biltmore Estate. Running the headline, "Stork Comes to Biltmore," the Asheville Citizen was keen to claim a newly arrived child for the community as a bunkum baby with a bunkum birthright, for whatever that means. But it did note that Dr. Samuel Battle, one of the more eminent physicians in Asheville, attended the birth alongside the Vanderbilt family physician. So it's not quite clear if he was involved in the delivery or not, but I would assume that he was at least on site to ensure that everything went smoothly during the delivery of Cornelia, being one of the more prominent families in the area, and him being the most well-respected physician.
Probably just a spare set of hands just in case they needed him.
Yeah, right. But going back to our Biltmore episode, Cornelia was kind of known for being into the strange and mystic side of life. So it's cool to find out that we share a birthday.
That's badass.
Yeah.
Well, it's not surprising because if you come into Earth and the first thing you see is Dr. Battle looking like a freaking musketeer. It's like, damn, this place is bohemian as a hell.
No joke. And going back to that episode, she might actually be one of the spirits that still roams the grounds of the Biltmore today.
Potentially so.
Now, anyways, later in 1927, after his friend E.W. Grove had developed a large portion of the land on Sunset Mountain with Grove Park and Grove Park Inn, Dr. Battle did end up purchasing his own plot of land directly next to the infamous Grove Park Inn and constructed the aforementioned kind of neo-Gothic style Battle Mansion on the property.
Yeah, so I mean, he probably, I'm assuming by that point he knew Grove and the crowd.
Yeah, him and Grove had been, I think Grove came to this area not too long after he started practicing. So they'd known each other for probably close to 30 years at this point. So they were old buddies. He probably just wanted to come be part of the social club up there on the mountain.
That makes sense. And the view is incredible.
For sure. But tragically, he suffered a stroke and died while attending a meeting at a medical society in Raleigh on April 29th of 1927. So there's kind of a debate as to if Dr. Battle actually got to spend any time living in his newly constructed home at all.
Damn. How old was this dude?
I believe he was, I want to say 60 when he passed.
I mean, he's still that's pretty good for the time, but
It
damn,
was, yeah.
that
So,
sucks.
yeah, it really does, especially, having, spent so much time in the city, really developed a name for yourself, and you build this place that you just kind of want to go and live the rest of your years out at. And
Damn, dude.
yeah, talk about bad luck.
Oh.
However, his widow and second wife, Jane Hall Liddell, did continue to live in the mansion until her death in the early 1950s.
Did she see him? Don't tell me yet.
I won't get too much into that. There's some weird stuff that happens, but not quite yet.
I'm just stoked because if he does show up, at least he got to hang there some.
Right, a little bit.
Before they tore it down.
yeah, talk about bad luck.
They just didn't want you to have this mansion, dude.
So after Jane's death, the mansion was put up for sale and purchased by Charles M. Britt, the owner of WLOS Radio in the early 1950s. So WLOS initially started just as a radio station. There was no TV component to it yet. Britt moved the radio station from downtown Asheville into the third floor of the Battle Mansion. And then a few years later, he decided to expand the station into television in 1954. So it didn't take long for him to realize, like, this is the next big thing. I should probably jump on that. Yeah, no joke. And it wasn't long after the station opened that rumors of paranormal activity began to circulate around the building.
Nice. That's where it all comes together for us.
Yeah. So jumping back to our history of WLOS here, a gentleman named Bob Caldwell, who worked at the station for over 30 years.
Never heard of him.
Never heard of that guy? I don't think a lot of people around here have. Probably not a very well-known name.
You know, I grew up actually not too far from his family plot on Brevard Road. I'm fairly certain it was the Caldwell plot, and I think they've sold it. But for a while, it was like this house on the hill that sat up there spooky shit.
Huh.
Always wanted to go in there, but never had the balls to do it.
Maybe that was his cup of tea.
Maybe. Who knows?
Because he recalled several incidents where coworkers experienced just some ghostly activity. He says, we had one radio announcer who was sitting at the console reading a piece of script when his eyes were drawn to the left. This girl's face was there, suspended in the air, just watching him. And I think...
Dude, that's creepy as
terrifying.
Shit.
Yeah.
He's like on the air?
He's on the air, sitting there reading a script, and he's just kind of like trying to follow this, and his eyes keep going up, and he's just like, holy shit, there's some kind of specter there.
Dude, I don't know what it is about that specific story, but that creeps me out so bad.
I think because you're so caught off guard by some situation like that. Like, it's one thing to go into a house almost investigating the paranormal and you see something. It's a whole nother thing to be just at work and then be caught off guard like that.
I like it too because it's like the ghost is like, what the hell are they doing in here?
What is TV? What is radio?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What's this bullshit?
So Bob actually tells another story of a handicapped gentleman that was working at the station as a late night DJ. And one night, sometime around 11 p.m., Bob says that this guy came running down the stairs, moving faster than he'd ever seen this handicapped man capable of. He said he ran out the door as fast as he could and never came back. He claimed to have seen the same spirit, which disturbed him so much that he resigned from his position.
Damn, dude.
Yeah, and knowing Bob Caldwell, I don't think this guy's one to spin a yarn quite like that if that was the case.
Of course. I mean, it doesn't really do any good to, I mean, maybe for like a Halloween special or something that they would do. Because, WLOS typically does do, they've covered like Helen's Bridge and things like that.
Yeah, of course.
But, I don't really see the huge benefit of perpetuating stories like that.
Yeah, and he's got a few others too. He tells another story of a janitor who claims to have seen the spirit on the roof a couple times, up near the chimney, just hanging out. The spirit was described as a young lady in a long flowing gown. And Caldwell said this apparition really became quite well known amongst staff at the studio.
I mean, that's not unlike the Pink Lady.
Well, just wait.
All right.
Yeah, just wait. He said that she was often described as a youngish girl in her 20s in a long dress of the period, which was in the apparition, I think was mostly described as being kind of hazy or semi-opaque.
Okay.
Kind of standard, what you would expect from your traditional ghost apparition. But according to popular legend that began to grow around just this apparition, the rumor or legend was that she fell or was pushed down a flight of steps.
Okay, so that's already a little different. Well, it's not completely, because if she fell, but see, because I've never heard the pink lady being associated with being pushed down steps.
No, but I mean, I think the association of did she fall or was she pushed off the balcony?
Yeah,
there's a lot of similarities
it's
there.
pretty close.
Yeah, and I guess the steps she was pushed down or fell down, I should say, it was steep, twisting steps that were on the corner of the mansion, and when she did fall, she tragically broke her neck and passed. So,
what year was Battle Mansion made?
Battle Mansion was, what did I say, 1927.
Okay.
Which is, 1920s is around the time the Pink Lady story is allegedly taking place.
Okay, so
But
yeah.
But just like the Pink Lady, there's no documented account of this incident actually taking place. But some believe that it might have taken place sometime around the 1940s is the timeline that they're associating with this alleged rumor/legend of how this apparition came to be.
Saying that the death took place in the 40s.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Which would have been around the time that Dr. Battle's widow, Jane, was still living in the house. Hadn't sold it to WLOS yet. So yeah, but also along that same note, it's still well after the death of Dr. Battle himself. So it's not like he was somehow involved with the situation whatsoever. He was long gone. Now, many versions of this legend claim that the girl was just a maid for the house, just hired help for Jane. And again, there were records of servants in the house, but there have been no records found of a documented death like the one described in the legend. So, you could trace back and find that Jane did hire servants that were living on site, but unless this was completely swept under the rug, there's no documented evidence of this.
What's up with people dying up on that mountain and you guys not telling anybody?
I know, that's kind of the weird part of that. The servants did apparently live on the third floor, which is where the apparition is commonly encountered. So that kind of lines up. But even friends of the family don't recall any unnatural death like this occurring at the mansion.
Can I just say, though, you got money, you can make stuff happen.
Yeah, no joke. But, I guess friends and family, years after the event, even when questioned about it, no one has any idea of what this could have been.
Sure.
So, I would assume after Jane is moved on from this world, if there was something that she was involved in covering up, like maybe that would have reached the light of day by now, but maybe not.
Seems rather unlikely, because to me, it's like you already have an established prominent haunting that's going on in a very giant building next door.
Mm-hmm.
Who's to say the Pink Lady couldn't seriously stroll a couple of yards over to the Battle Mansion and be like, I'm just going to hang out on the roof over here.
Yeah, you're hitting the nail on the head right now.
All right, cool.
For one reason or another, station employees began to refer to this apparition of the alleged servant as Alice. It's kind of weird when you consider that Dr. Battle's first wife was also named Alice.
Okay, that's interesting. Now, that name actually is ringing a bell for me because I remember them talking about this now.
Alice, yeah. Mm-hmm. But Alice Battle passed away decades before the mansion was even constructed. So that timeline doesn't quite add up for Alice Battle being the incident that occurred in allegedly 1940.
Yeah.
Now, it's probably worth noting here that Alice Battle was extremely well known and loved, just like her husband was in the community. But from everything I found, Jane was noted for not being quite as popular. She was known to throw large parties at the mansion and kind of loved being the center of attention, but many kind of viewed her as more just egotistical and less personable than Alice. Less sincere is kind of the best way to put it. In his book, Haunted Asheville, Joshua P. Warren ponders, if the classic legend of Alice is false and she really was the doctor's first wife, some believe the ghost story was used to keep her memory alive. Among the servants, it was not acceptable to discuss Alice. A ghost story might, therefore, be used as a non-confrontational and unchallengeable means of speaking about her. Which is kind of an interesting theory, just that, you don't want to talk about the ex-wife in front of the current widow, and just out of respect, you kind of invent a weird ghost story as a way to talk about her and reference her. So,
or you just I don't know, talk about her in the parking lot.
Yeah, that too. Might have saved some hassle. So, I guess back in the day, WLOS would host this 2-hour children's program called Mr. Bill that was hosted by Bill Norwood. And I've seen a lot of people reference this just around town and a lot of comments on this. From what I saw, it premiered in 1959 and ran until the late 80s. Is this something that you like have any memory of at all, or is this kind of right before your time on WLOS there?
I mean, it's not really ringing a bell with me, but I think that if there were some remnant of it on YouTube, I might recognize it. Because,
Okay.
I mean, dude, I was, at the tail end of the 80s, I was still like, relatively conscious and watching things on local access.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, anyways, from what I could tell, this show kind of featured just a mix of cartoons, entertainers, and guests and fun activities. So it was just kind of like a morning show, but geared towards children.
yeah.
Well, one day, Bill had a local witch from Morganton come up to join him on the show. She performed a seance and tried to contact the ghost of Elvis and some other stuff along those lines, which kind of seems kind of wild for a children's show, but I guess times were different back then.
Dude, that's metal as hell.
Yeah, no joke. I'm sitting here reading this. It's like, oh, this sounds like a nice little children's show.
And
Bill's
today
like,
we're going to conjure Satan, kids.
today.
Yay!
So yeah, that was kind of threw me for a loop there, but like I said, maybe times were different.
Dude, old Asheville was the shit.
No joke. So of course, Bill tells the witch about the ghost of Alice in the building, and he claimed that she turned white and said, "There's something mystic in the air. I knew it. I knew there was something here. She is in the building. I know it. I feel a sense of it. May I do another seance for her tonight?" And Bill's like, "Sure, you're already here. It's not going to hurt anything."
Famous last word.
So at midnight later that night, they go up to the attic and perform a seance. Now, Bill said the witch claimed that she made contact with Alice, but he admits that he wasn't sure whether she actually did or not. When interviewed about this, Bill couldn't recall exactly what the witch said about Alice, but he does remember her being very interested in finding out whether she had fallen down the stairs or if she was pushed, which, if you are going to have a seance and have some sort of communication, that's probably a good place to start questioning.
Yeah, why not try to figure some stuff out?
Yeah, exactly. Put some pieces together. Bill did recall another production member that claimed to see the spirit of Asheville on multiple occasions in the third floor window, just looking out at Macon Avenue, quietly observing.
Yeah.
So,
Peaceful.
yeah, something like that.
Haunting, peaceful, scaring the shit out of people.
So, yeah, Bill's kind of just alluding to it's like, I don't know if this witch really, really talked to her, if she was just kind of, doing her thing up there. But, I did talk to other people that claim to see this specter in the window, so I'm not going to write it off as complete woo-woo.
Yeah.
Now, when we jump to another Bill that spent a significant amount of time working in the WLS building, and that's your boy, old Bill Banner.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, he was the director of retail services for the station for over 40 years. Now, Bill Banner states, "I've worked here till 2 or 3 a.m. downstairs when they had the laboratory down there. I would step out into the hall to come up the stairs to see the fleeting form of a woman. It was ghostly. You saw it, and then you didn't see it. All the way down at the end of the hall, you would just see this nebulous form."
Yeah.
That's something that he had mentioned to you before?
I think so,
Yeah,
actually.
probably so.
I only really got to spend one very afternoon into a decently late evening with Bill. But buddy, let me tell you, we didn't say hardly anything. We just sat there and let him tell stories. And man, dude, he was so fun and he was so funny and just God, I will never forget it.
Yeah. He seems like a character just from these quotes, because he went on to say, you would look and it would just simply slide around the corner. So you'd run down there and nothing was there. You'd come to the bottom of the stairs and you could hear voices. You would hear laughing and people talking and walking and everything. So I would sneak up the stairs and go to the lobby, and you'd hear them going back and forth. I'd creep up the stairs, run and look right fast. Nothing there. Bill's just sitting here, just no fear in him. He's like, I'm going to sneak up on this thing, but doesn't seem like he was ever able to successfully achieve that.
I think when you've survived being a prisoner of war, there's probably not much you're scared of.
Right. No joke. Now, on another occasion, Bill Banner saw the phantom of Alice outside the building. He'd been working at the station until 3 a.m., and he went out on the lawn to take a break. And Banner recalls the full moon shining brightly on the ghostly figure. And he states, "I saw this nebulous form of a woman in a purple gown He just glided across the grass. There was no sound whatsoever. And then down over the bank of the golf course. I dashed over there, looked, and no one was there. Now, this instance is really intriguing to me for a couple reasons. One being that the golf course that he's referring to is the golf course that belongs to the Grove Park Inn.
Yeah.
Also, Bill describing the gown as being purple in the glow of moonlight.
Well,
that's pretty significant.
That's pretty significant. And the other side of it too is number one, what a scene, what a picture he painted there. I definitely had heard that story before. Didn't realize it was Bill that experienced that.
That was Bill.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Was that from Warren that you heard that one?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that was.
I mean, I think if you look at the original cover of Haunted Asheville, where another person I haven't seen in a million years, but Ashley Simpson was the name of the model that was the Pink Lady. I think they're depicting that scene on the cover of the freaking book.
I think so, because I mean, everything that I just shared was directly pulled from Haunted Asheville.
Yeah.
Just to give credit where credit's due here. But you know, when you think about it, like purple and pink are already really similar
Super
colors,
close.
Especially like being viewed from like far away, and in like some sort of lighting, like with the full moon, like it might cause a little bit of, you know, distortion on the exact color.
Can you imagine seeing that shit being out there in the night by yourself at 3:00 in the morning?
Yeah, I mean, especially it's one thing with him experiencing this already in the building and seeing this nebulous form of Alice already, and then he goes out and sees her, and she's purple. He sees a noticeable color to her, and he's like, he's going on the golf course.
God, she's got to hit the links before she goes to haunt some other people.
That really leads to the question, could the ghost of Alice and the Pink Lady of Grove Park Inn be one and the same?
So it seems to be pointing in that direction at this point.
Yeah, the stories of both women, you know, kind of allegedly dying from some sort of tragic fall, and, you know, questions of whether they were pushed or whether they just fell, kind of make the thread even more compelling, if I had to say so.
Oh, yeah.
Now, apparently there's one version of the Pink Lady legend that claims that the spirit was the wife of a doctor. Now, again, I'm not sure if this is just another example of the telephone game kind of crossing information over from both legends, or maybe there's something more to it. I don't know. Joshua P. Warren wondered the same thing after his extensive investigation of the Grove Park Inn and the Pink Lady, so he again pondered in the book Haunted Asheville, if indeed the same spirit is wandering both locations, it makes the mystery of the ghost even more complex. Did the young lady die at the Battle Mansion or the Grove Park Inn? Was she a maid, a guest, or someone else? Did Warren ever kind of tie you into this theory that he alluded to these two apparitions might be one and the same?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely talked about it quite a bit. I think by the time that I had gotten into the Lemur team, they had done so much around the Grove Park Inn and the Pink Lady that was kind of old news.
Yep.
And we were kind of moving on. I mean, obviously Brown Mountain was something that we were really starting to lean into. So we didn't really talk about it all that much. It came up now and then, and we hung out up at the GPI many a time.
Yeah.
But I had definitely heard those theories, and to me it does seem like I feel like people are kind of trying to tie in this connection with Alice of the Battle Mansion because they're experiencing the haunting there.
Yeah.
But to me, it just seems like all signs point to somebody did die, but I think that they just kind of go wherever they want around the area.
Yeah. So like you mentioned, after Warren and his crew kind of had that extensive investigation of the GPI, him and his crew went and kind of attempted their own investigation of the Battle Mansion in the early to mid 90s. However, they found it difficult to gather any sort of scientific data regarding the activity, just purely on the amount of computers, electrical equipment, everything that was in there from, running a TV studio out of this building.
Course.
You can't get any sort of meaningful reading out of EMF or any other meters for that matter. Everything's just pinging off all the electricity going through there, the wiring, the equipment.
Sure.
So when you're trying to do this from a scientific evidence-based way, there wasn't a lot of meaningful data to take away from that. Warren did say that he kind of felt just a weird air to the place, but other than that, he never saw anything, and they never gathered anything that indicated there was something going on while they were present at the time.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's a lot of electricity, and different weird signals flying all over the place. So kind of makes sense.
I mean, we even experienced some of that down at Lake Lure when we went down to the basement with some of those exposed wires.
I almost mentioned that too, not to give too much away, but there is a segment that we're going to have on our video that we have of the Lake Lure Inn investigation where we're allowed access down through there, and I'm able to show just like, hey, look, people, if you're near a bunch of big ass wires and your electromagnetic field thing is going off, well, that's what it's there to read.
Yeah, exactly.
We're all using it for a different reason, but that's why they made it.
Yeah, for sure. So Warren does have kind of one profound quote from his experience investigating the area that I wanted to share. And he says, even though the two buildings appear so differently, there is still a strange balance between the two structures. To stand on the roof of the Battle Mansion and see the neighboring Grove Park Inn, or to do the opposite, is a peaceful and somewhat symmetrical experience. Though this balance may not be apparent at the surface of the two structures, it seems instead to rest somewhere just below the surface. It is on an enigmatic and surreal level that the two monuments seem to be joined. Perhaps it is on this plane, a level beyond our own understanding, that a lost spirit wanders between the two for eternity.
Well said, Warren.
Right. And Warren was what, 18 when he wrote Haunted Asheville?
Probably. He was pretty young.
Yeah. So that's a pretty profound takeaway for someone that was, probably in or just out of high school.
Oh, yeah. I sure as shit wasn't writing stuff like that.
Right.
When I was
right. For sure. And it's just it's a cool way to just view this mystery of the traveling specter, if you will.
Yeah.
Now, although he didn't walk away with any scientific evidence from his investigation, he did, walk away with a pretty deep potential theory on what's going on between these two buildings. And, hard to say that he seems like he was potentially onto something here. But Warren wasn't the only investigator to take a crack at this case. Sarah Harrison, head of the Asheville Paranormal Society, also attempted to investigate Battle Mansion. I think we've mentioned Sarah on one episode before. Maybe it was the Hickson House episode, was something that she did out in Canton, right?
So for some reason at the time, the name was not resonating with me. I 100% know Sarah.
Okay. That's what I figured.
We didn't talk like a lot back in the day. I mean, I was pretty young, but dude, Sarah was at a ton of the... we would do gatherings at Barley's here and there with the Lemur team, things like that. Sarah was always around. I think she's helped us with a couple investigations, but I ended up seeing her picture after we talked about that, and I was like, holy shit, yeah, I know her. I just hadn't seen her.
Yeah, you need that face to the name
exactly.
there. Yeah. Do you know if she's still around Asheville, or is she?
I'm fairly certain that she is, because I could have sworn that I saw an article not too long ago that was talking about some stuff she was still involved with. So, hey, Sarah, if you're listening, thank you for all your work in the community. Long time no see, and
come on the pod sometime.
Yeah, oh hell yeah, it'd be awesome to talk. So
yeah, so WLOS did eventually vacate the Battle Mansion to move to a studio in another location, and they sold the property to the Grove Park Inn. Now Sarah interviewed a Grove Park Inn security guard who had a different ghostly encounter there than, the commonly reported spirit of Alice. So as the security guard was making his rounds, the nighttime rounds, he would drive around the property. And so he was driving by Battle Mansion, and he claims that he saw a man in a top hat and formal attire. Later that week, he saw a picture of Dr. Samuel Battle and swears up and down that is the same exact figure he saw at Battle Mansion.
Aw, that makes me happy.
It does make me happy because, you talk about this guy that's just such this beloved sweetheart in the community having this unexpected tragic end where he doesn't even get to enjoy his huge monument that he's built to enjoy and live out the rest of his years in. Or did he?
Yeah. I mean, well, what year did they tear it down?
Well, no, that was 2006, I believe. So, still, like, the potential alleged spirit of Dr. Battle might have gotten a little more time there than we might think.
Yeah, well, at least he got some time there, I hope.
I hope so, because, you always have these situations where, like, even at the Grove Park Inn, you hear about the Pink Lady. That is the prominent figure. That's the one that gets the headlines. That's what they make the merchandise of. That's what's really captured the whole paranormal aspect for them. But then you get to talking to the employees, and they're like, yeah, Pink Lady's one thing. Like, go down to the spa. There's some weird shadow figures down there. And it's like, there's always these other entities that are kind of like associated with a lot of these properties that, don't don't always get the headlines.
And according to your lovely wife's Instagram feed, something even far more terrifying in the catacombs of the spa.
Influencers.
I saw that and cackled pretty hard.
Oh, it was pretty awkward. I've never watched someone do a TikTok dance in person, but now I have.
Way more terrifying than running into the pink lady.
But yeah, kind of going back on that same thread, like, is it possible that Alice wasn't the only spirit occupying the Battle Mansion property? And, furthermore, if the spirit of Alice does in fact belong to the late wife of Dr. Battle, is it possible that the couple chose to enjoy the mansion that they never got to in life?
Yeah. Well, I hope they certainly did because, what a place. What a place to be. I think that's one of the biggest shames, obviously, Dr. Battle losing his wife and then dying himself. But it's like, this was this incredible building, this incredible monument. I mean, talk about prime real estate there in Asheville. You had the whole shebang, what anybody in this town could ever dream of, and didn't even really get to experience it.
Yeah.
I see why I'd come back.
Right. But, in the end, unfortunately, I think I'm left with more questions than answers on this one. There's just a lot of open ends on this. There's a lot of potential theories and a lot of theories that do kind of seem to make sense, but there's almost too many theories, too many cooks in the kitchen with this one that kind of, I don't say muddy the waters, but it just leaves a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of mystery behind this one.
Well, you're in luck, Austin.
Oh?
Because we can always do a part 2.
Hey, we could, but the unfortunate thing is I'm never going to have the opportunity to investigate or even visit the Battle Mansion because it was demolished in 2006.
That's true, but we could potentially go in the new place that's there.
Well, I did think about that, and I did try to kind of do a little bit of due diligence and see what I could find about that. But
let's break in tonight.
Unfortunately, when the Battle Mansion was demolished, I guess the building kind of fallen into a state that repairing it wasn't just financially worth it at that time.
Yeah.
Historically, probably would have been definitely worth it to do it, but, hindsight's 2020 on that. So they decided to tear it down and make room for a new luxury condo building to be placed on the land. And of course, those condos were named the Fitzgerald. And I'm just going to choose to think that they were named after Zelda and not that other guy.
Yeah, let's hope.
Yeah.
Dude, what? Let's take this beautiful, awesome Gothic architecture, destroy it, and put up a condo and name it after a womanizing asshole.
Yeah, for sure. So if you're new here and wondering where our distaste for Scott comes from, well, just go back and listen to our Zelda Fitzgerald episode and see what you think about the guy after that.
Yeah, I'm debating not editing out the F-bombs anymore, so you guys might get to hear what we really think of him soon.
Scott Fitzgerald.
Hey, you, Scott Fitzgerald. Okay, I was going to go really bad, but I stopped myself.
So I did attempt to see if I could contact anyone from the Fitzgerald to see if anyone there to this day is experiencing strange activity or anything like that on the property. But seeing as these condos are now privately owned, didn't have much luck.
Yeah, they're not gonna give up the goods.
But if anyone out there listening happens to know anyone that is really rich and lives in the Fitzgerald condos, we'd love to be put in touch with them.
Or if you yourself are really rich, live in the Fitzgerald condos, and listen to our podcast somehow, and want to invite Austin and I over to do a paranormal investigation, hey, we would love to. It's ghostsinthemountains@gmail.com. Hit us up.
Yeah, and I think that goes along, like, we're not going to get to investigate the Battle Mansion, but that's probably the closest thing we can get to it.
But hey, I don't think you need the Battle Mansion. Because all signs to me point to this being the pink lady, and she has a permanent residence at the GPI. You can't tell me that there's a couple of people that haven't woken up in their $1 million condo and she's staring them in the face while they're sleeping.
Well, man, if anyone has a story like that, I think that's compelling enough evidence to really kind of put some new fire under the pink lady / Alice being one and the same theory.
Hey. If you're out there and you're listening or you know somebody that has experienced this and you know about something that's gone on like this, please get in touch because, we're not trying to draw any attention to anybody's private residence. We're just curious. We're curious to see if this phenomenon has carried over into the new residence. Because again, like you mentioned, This is kind of a new territory for us because we've never had a place that was torn down and then there's like a new spot that's been put on top of it where this haunting has occurred. So
Yeah.
we're just trying to see if that's a thing.
Because one of the other things you hear about so commonly is construction tends to stir up the spirits.
Yeah.
So demolition, that seems like, construction on steroids to me. So maybe, maybe some crazy shit was going on there for a period of time. Who knows? Love to hear about it if it was.
Yep.
But in addition to that, I did kind of try to do a little bit more digging, trying to just get in touch with some direct witnesses or experiencers on anything like this. So I found a group of old WLOS employees, and I reached out to a handful of them to see if any of them had direct experiences in the building that they wanted to share.
Of course you did.
Well, I went through the current WLOS directory, but they're all too new. None of them had the Battle Mansion experience, at least that's on the staff currently today that I could find.
I'm just saying, I love that you just hit people up like, yo,
yeah, hey,
did you see Alice?
Yeah, just like that.
Yo, I'm the doctor captain, totally credible.
Yeah, you must be reading my messages.
You forward them to me in your sleep. Anyway.
So yeah, I found this. It was a Facebook group for old retired WLS employees. So I reached out to a handful of them to see if any of them had direct experiences in the building that they'd be willing to share. And while they were all familiar with the spirit of Alice, no one I talked to had seen the apparition themselves. A lot of them claimed that the quote-unquote old-timers that worked in the radio station on the top floor were the ones that had the most direct experiences witnessing Alice, which is kind of interesting to me. It's almost like it had its kind of heyday where it was poking around there like, what's going on here? But it seems like the original OG WLOS people were the ones that experienced a lot more of the activity, where the other ones that were there, maybe the hauntings had kind of died down at that point.
Well, dude, here's another weird theory. So the radio station's on the top floor.
Mm-hmm.
What if the electromagnetic activity that was being projected because of all of that equipment up there from the radio was making it easier for her to manifest?
I really like that theory.
That's super fun.
Yeah, no joke. Especially you talk about like the guy being on air reading a script and he just looks up and he sees this thing. Like maybe she didn't know that she was manifesting herself.
and people saying that they used to see her hanging out on the roof.
Mm-hmm.
It's right next to the top floor where the radio station was.
A lot points to that. I wonder if there's other experiences of haunted radio stations, another, common thread to dive into.
I mean, well, when I worked at 570 AM, I don't recall there ever being a thing. That was a pretty small radio station, but I tell you what, if someone had told me it was haunted, I would have believed them, because maybe it was just because of the air that I experienced there, because we're like there in the middle of the night doing Speaking of Strange, talking about weird stuff,
fair enough.
In this like old, radio station with equipment from like the 60s and 70s. So yeah, it felt spooky, but I don't know. We'll have to talk to the bro about that. He spent a lot more time there than I did.
Yeah, or just any other radio station. Might be a interesting rabbit hole to dive down.
Hell yeah.
But, either way, I do want to give a shout out to Beth, Bill, Cindy, Gail for all getting back to me and just be willing to share what they could on this. And, also shout out to anyone that might respond to me after we record this. I'm sure a lot of my messages are just sitting in most people's request box that probably don't get checked that often. Yeah. But I do want to thank the people that did respond and were interested in sharing what they could on their experience. So shout out to them.
Yeah, thank you all for replying to Austin. That is, it's super cool. Even if they didn't have an experience, it's so cool to just be able to talk to people that were part of the place,
right? And they were so excited to tell, like, even if they didn't have an experience, they wanted to talk about someone they knew that did, or talk about, well, I didn't quite see anything, but I always had just a weird, creepy feeling, stuff like that. To where it's like they're excited to share their opportunity. And pretty much all of them asked me to share the episode when it comes out. They were excited to hear it, and they were excited that we were digging into something like this.
Oh, nice. Well, I will edit out the F-bombs.
I don't think it matters. Whatever.
They will be forewarned.
But yeah, as I mentioned, I'm just left with a lot of open-ended questions on this one. Like, have the spirits of Alice and Dr. Battle taken up residency in the new home of the Fitzgerald condos? Or is Alice just one and the same with the Pink Lady and spending all of her time over at the GPI these days? It's interesting theory, and I don't think one has to disprove the other.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know though. Maybe it's because of like how I don't know, just like viscerally, I picture the story that Bill Banner told about just seeing her in the moonlight. You know, I mean, that's just like such an eerie but beautiful image in my mind. And, you know, obviously there's this huge connotation with the pink lady of the Grove Park Inn. You know, you can't have one without the other. But I kind of just like this other side of it. That's this something that we run into on the podcast all the time of like, here's this little piece of history that we never even knew was a thing, and it ends up being this massive focal point for other huge happenings in the area.
Yeah.
Dr. Battle coming here, you know, looking to try to cure people's tuberculosis, and then the Vanderbilts end up being drawn here because of that stuff.
And then Grove coming along with that too.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Yeah.
Like, who would have thought that? Yeah, I don't know. That was just a crazy thing.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about like weird coincidences and synchronicities, like almost fate type situations. Like the fact that tuberculosis was the catalyst that brought Biltmore and the Grove Park Inn to Asheville is kind of wild. And the fact that you had this just renowned medical professional that had come up with this theory on how to treat it, and that they were drawn to this area because of Dr. Battle. I think that's pretty wild. He's kind of the glue that formed a lot of what this town is known as today.
It makes you wonder what Asheville would have been like if Battle had never come here and Biltmore had never come here. You know?
Yeah.
Like, Asheville could straight up still be like, you know, kind of this little hole in the wall area. I don't think that it would have stayed that way for long had it been. But when you have something like the Biltmore that is just bringing in so many tourists per year, it's weird. Like, I can walk through this neighborhood and look over and there's a freaking castle sitting there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that weird to anybody else?
that we just live in a land where castles are commonplace.
Yeah, we do not live in Germany, but boom, there you go. There's a damn castle.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and the fact that, I don't know, I feel just drawn to the character of Dr. Battle just for being such just this loving figure of the community too. Someone that you know, took pride in his work, but also just really, really wanted to do right by his patients. And like the quote that I came across earlier, that he wanted to become friends with everyone that he met. I think that's just such a cool personality trait for someone, especially like back in the day, and someone that's just such an esteemed figure. That's just kind of awesome.
Oh, hell yeah, man. Well, I had no idea about anything about him other than that he had a mansion. And now that I know a little bit more about his legacy, man.
Yeah.
Again, it enriches the lore of the area for me, because I'm like, dude, I love this idea of you could be rolling up there, you could see the pink lady near the Grove Park Inn, but you could also see the spirit of this like crazy dressed, awesome doctor in this cape. Oh my God, dude.
Right?
He was a doctor and a captain. He had the cape and the hat. Anyway, I'm throwing stuff.
Am I reincarnated? No.
You might be Battle.
No.
You do have a hat on.
I do. But it's not the wide brim variety like you like to sport. There was actually another story that I came across on him. I thought I'd wrote it down, but it said that he would walk through the downtown Asheville. He would just buy this big bouquet of flowers, and he'd like have bows tied around them. He just walked down the street, passing them out to every woman he saw, regardless of their social class. He was just like, I hope you have a nice day, young lady, and just go around passing out flowers. It's just a fun thing to do.
What a nice guy.
I know, right?
So I'm assuming we're coming to a close pretty soon with this.
Yeah. I'd say fairly soon.
I did tell you earlier that I was going to share with you a story about Bill Banner. You want me to say that for the very end?
Well, let's go now.
Let's do it now. All right. So the one time I did get to hang out with Bill Banner, again, this is somebody that was involved in broadcast from the very beginning up there, WLOS. And we talked about all kinds of interesting esoteric stuff. I'm assuming that Josh met Bill through his endeavors up there at the Battle Mansion and looking into the paranormal stuff. But Banner had shared with us that he had basically a sudden unexpected death in his family at one point, and that his sister had sadly passed away. And he said that one night he woke up, he says he was not in a dream state or anything like that. He was fully awake, because he remembers like sitting up and being awake for a minute after this happened. But he said he woke up after his sister had passed away. And I'm leaving out a couple of details, but basically the long and the short of it is that he said, you're not supposed to be here. You need to go. You need to go to wherever it is that you're supposed to go. And then she just vanished right in front of his eyes. So this was something that happened in his residence.
Wild.
And Bill, Bill was an interesting character. The dude might have had, and for a lack of better terms, some sort of supernatural prowess. Some sort of ability to be able to tap into that kind of stuff.
That's what I was actually going to allude to, especially when you have so many people that were at the station that, maybe felt that creepy energy, but Bill's the one that experienced what I would consider some of the most prominent experiences and sightings of Alice / potentially Pink Lady.
Well, I think that one of the reasons that Josh took a liking to and an interest in Bill was because, Bill, when he talked about like things that were quote unquote paranormal, he did not talk about them in an extravagant manner. He talked about them in a very matter of fact way.
Yeah.
To where, dude, this guy's been through everything a human being can go through in his life. Why is he going to make some of this stuff up? And, he spoke with us very frankly about experiences that he had with what he would attribute to essentially being astral projection.
Oh.
Yeah.
Man.
I can get into this a little bit later on. We could do a whole different thing, but there were quite a few things that he talked about. These aren't the only things. He could have had a very active imagination and just leaned into that stuff. He might have had some sort of spiritual background that made him want to lean into that stuff a little bit more. Who knows? But he told us some pretty interesting stuff, and I'll just leave it about there.
Yeah, man, that's pretty intense, especially for someone that, you wouldn't assume, just an unsuspecting character. Like you've got, station or retail director at this TV station.
Yeah.
Who has allegedly this pretty vast interest in our world of the strange and paranormal.
Oh,
so
yeah.
That's pretty cool, honestly. And quite honestly, we were talking about just like that shared energy of the Grove Park Inn and the Battle Mansion. And it kind of made me think back to something that Warren said to us when we were talking to him a few weeks ago about drawing a line between some of these paranormal locations and seeing where that extends out to.
Sure.
You've got these two things right next to each other. It's hard to imagine that line that Warren's describing wouldn't run right from the GPI into Battle Mansion and potentially some other areas around here. I think I might have to hop on a little mapping software and map out some of these places and see what we could find.
Yeah, because in that quote that you were reading from him earlier, he talks about this like symmetry between the Battle Mansion and the Grove Park Inn. And when he was on our podcast not too long ago, he was talking about these, the not just the Bermuda Triangle, but the Nevada Triangle, which, he's talking about essentially, you draw a line through these maps that go through like Reno and some different places. And there's this whole big thing of, paranormal activity. Maybe this is just a theory that Warren has been working on a long time, and he's like starting to really finally see the parallels of what he was witnessing at the Battle Mansion and the Grove Park Inn, and starting to realize that these patterns are reoccurring. So who knows, man?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it is interesting that a place like the Grove Park Inn does seem to pop up so much in a lot of these episodes we're talking about. Hell, we're talking to Alan Greenfield, and he said, well, yeah, I was staying with my parents at the Grove Park Inn when I had the idea to form the National UFO Conference.
Yeah.
So it's like, man, a big piece of ufology history is based in the Grove Park Inn, even.
Oh, hell yeah. We always talked about it back in the day with Warren about how, and you think about this terminology however you want to talk about it. I kind of look at it in a kind of, in passing, theoretical kind of fun way, but people talk about how the Grove Park Inn is like a vortex.
Yeah.
It's bringing all of these things together. Who knows? Maybe Battle was the beginning of that vortex. Maybe he was the reason. I guess, but the Grove Park Inn was established there before the Battle Mansion was, but he obviously had like some sort of connection to the area.
Yeah, Battle's kind of, that's what attracted Grove in the first place to the area. So, he is kind of the puppet master, if you think about it in that regard.
Indeed.
So, yeah, lots of open-ended questions, some that I don't know if I'll ever really have the true answer to, but I think that's the fun part of this. Like, you don't want all the answers to everything because then it takes the mystery and the fun out of some things.
That's true. But you never know. We might end up getting an email from somebody. It's like, oh, yeah, I live there. This place is haunted as shit.
I would love that. Have us over, please.
Deep in the mystery.
Maybe we do have to, we've talked about doing some more live on-site investigations. GPI is definitely on the list. If we could get some access to the Fitzgerald, I would love to tie that into it.
Be kind of dope. All right, dude. Well, I guess we'll wrap this one up.
That sounds good to me.
All right, everybody. Well, this has been another one of those instances, at least for me, where you roll into something that's like, okay, yeah, sure, of course, it's a mansion. There's got to be something significant to it. But the whole damn thing just ends up getting crazier and crazier and crazier as you go along. But, you know, Austin and I might be doing a little bit of, you know, post-show theorizing on some certain things. I don't know if we'll do it on this one, but, you know, we might start doing a little looking into our top theories of what we think could be going on in some of these episodes. And, you know, if we do end up doing that, you know, maybe we'll just do it as a little extra thing for the Patreon subscribers. And, you know, if people have an interest in that.
Yeah, like the real fun speculative stuff that we just don't want to throw out there for people, the average listeners to think we're crazy.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to get real woo.
Oh, yeah.
On the sidecast, the Nugget. the Nugget cast. If we decide to do that, who knows? But anyway, thank you all for sticking with us in year 2 of Ghosts in the Mountains. It was really awesome to go back to our roots, the place that we wanted to start this podcast initially about Western North Carolina, Asheville, North Carolina, the Grove Park, and this area that is central to all the spooky and the weird. And finally get to come back to our roots after, you know, branching out a little bit.
Yeah, we did some holiday episodes here and there, but I'm very excited to be getting back to the stuff that's really, quite honestly, just in our backyard. And we've covered a lot of Western North Carolina stuff, but there's still quite a bit to be uncovered.
Oh, there's going to be things to find here for a long time. But that said, if you want to know more about what we're doing, you can go to ghostsinthemountains.com. If you want to email us, it's ghostsinthemountains@gmail.com. You can support us on Patreon for some behind-the-scenes goodies, some music that we make, and an ad-free version of the podcast. But with all that said, thank you all so much for listening. Stay spooky, everybody. And, you know, let us know if that place is haunted as hell. All right, I'll tell you one thing that Bill Banner told me.
Yeah?
I'm not going to tell you everything right now. I'm going to leave this for another episode. The dude experienced what I can only describe as the Force. Like telekinetic shit.
Okay.
One time.
As in, he used the Force, or?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to leave it there. Not a funny one, but that's an Easter egg trail.
A cliffhanger.
A cliffhanger. All right. Good night, everybody. Thanks for listening.